point me in the right direction. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, January 10th meeting of the Town Council Study Committee. I guess I do the little script first, right? Okay, this is the hybrid open meeting script. So members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or who acts inappropriately. We are using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak or ask a question. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised, I hope. All questions should be directed through the chair. Confirming member access. As a preliminary matter, this is Joe Grouse, Chair of the Town Council Study Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members of and persons anticipated in the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Caroline Balzer.
Hey.
Jeff Paulson.
Here.
Tom Dixon.
Here.
Paul Barber.
Yeah.
Curtis Barnes.
Yes.
Jill Beef.
Here.
Joe Grouse here. Are there any members of the committee on the Zoom, Jeff? I don't.
Just Donna.
Just Donna. And as an aside, well, I'll get to it a little bit later, but unfortunately Donna does not have a vote, so I'll explain that a little bit later. We have no staff members on the call, and there are no anticipated speakers today. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Town Council Study Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will possibly feature public comment. For this meeting, the Town Council Study.
Keep going.
I'm
You're
just
doing great.
everything.
You're doing great.
For this meeting, the Town Council Study Committee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video. Well, some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that for those folks on Zoom, that other folks may be able to see you, and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you may broadcast or say may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided members of this body that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless there are some changes that we make as we go along. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. Figure out who takes the minutes in a moment. I will introduce each speaker and then in today's meeting, basically each topic. After we discuss those, we will go around the table. People have any comments or questions, and then we'll actually, I'm going to stop right there. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Okay. And finally, I'm going to skip much of this, but finally, each vote taken in the meeting today will be conducted by roll call vote. All righty. Acceptance of the agenda. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please?
Second.
We'll go the other way. Jill?
Aye.
Curtis?
Yes.
Bo? Tom?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Caroline? Joe? Aye.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'm taking the minutes reluctantly. Do I have to put down that we just did that? I mean, to me, it's just routine. You see what I did the last time, just sort of highlighted what was, if I have to say everyone scratched their nose and did that, I would be very hard to get along with.
My understanding from attorneys who deal with boards is it's an art to take meeting minutes. So I think you make the best summary that you can, and when you type it up, fill it in as best you remember.
And as Jeff says, you can refer to the Zoom or you can go to Zoom.
I mean, clearly a vote was taken and it was unanimous, as
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Fine to
wanna
me.
say we agreed to accept the agenda.
Right.
To me, that's superfluous. All right, I'll try, guys.
Thank you, Curtis.
Those
Mr. Chair.
volunteers are welcome.
I would think that probably the easiest way to do it is just to say the agenda was approved unanimously by those present or something like that. And then if we have a contested vote, then it should be listed as,
Okay,
you know, Jeff, yes, Tom, no, whatever.
yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
You can take the minutes next time, my friend.
I know, I'm in purgatory for not doing the first ones yet, which I promise I will get to.
We'll get to you, Tom. I think we're gonna let everybody have a chance to take it.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
All right,
Assign the minutes at the end of this meeting for the person to take them at the next meeting.
that's a fair suggestion. All right, that leads us to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes for December 20th, 2023. Did everybody get a copy? I think there was.
Yes.
Any comments or questions?
Two comments. On number 2, it says alternate for Jill V, FinCom non-voting, but we are a voting member.
Yes, you are.
I got that clarified
Sorry, we're ex
yesterday.
officio though, so
Right.
you're close.
Well, I didn't know last week. I found out yesterday.
And then it says Hillary Redport guest. I was just thinking, didn't we just want to make it clear as a member of the public? Because then people understand that we have public participation and we're open.
Do I need her in there or not?
She was not invited as a guest. She was a member of the public.
Yeah, I would just, if you could edit it, Curtis, and just say member of the public.
I can correct this paragraph to get the two who are ex officio's voters.
Okay.
Okay.
Trusting Curtis to make the edits as discussed. Are there any other comments or edits required of the minutes? Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as edited?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I'll go this way. Caroline?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. Bo?
Aye.
Curtis?
Yes,
Jill?
Yes.
Joe? Yes. Or aye. And again, we don't have, okay. Before we go to.
Sorry, can we? Are we gonna talk about what you all talked about at the last meeting? Because the minutes are kind of jogging some things for the project plan.
I
to
was not,
include it.
I was not planning on talking about it, but do you have any questions?
Well, this might just lead into what we're doing. So I just want to comment. It says how you all are reaching out to the Collins Center and to Mike Dutton, right? Which sounds great. Did we actually want to reach out to our own town manager and include her in that as well?
If you will hold that question, I may be able to answer it in
There
a
you go.
second or so.
I figured. See, if I say now, then we don't talk about it later.
Okay, so I'm gonna stick in some administrative comments, before we let the public speak here.
so we haven't gone to public comment yet.
No, we're holding, it
Okay.
after approval of your minutes, Curtis, before
The
public
minutes.
comment, the minutes, okay.
Alright.
Just a couple of housekeeping and other administrative issues. And I said this already, but I'm gonna say it again. A question was raised a week ago by Curtis about who are the voting and who are the non-voting members of the committee. I checked with Libby, she got the minutes of the select board meeting. Basically, the voting members of this town council study committee are all of us, which includes Tom as the ex officio select board member, Jill is the ex officio FinCom member. Unfortunately, Donna, who's waving there at the top, Donna and her alternate Pam were not voted are non-voting members of
They're
the
not
committee.
voted anyway.
So, just so we're clear on that, there are 7 committee members, the 2 ex officios and or their alternates can vote. I will leave it to the ex officios, including Donna, to arrange for their alternates to show up if you're not gonna make the meeting. So that, but they are always, the alternate, Jeremy, would be welcome to come. He just couldn't vote and he would have to be a member of the public if he was here as a.
That's what he said last night.
But he can vote if he's here in lieu of me. You're saying no. You're saying he
If
can't
he,
vote. in
if
lieu
he
of-
is here in your
Look,
place,
he
he
can.
votes.
He votes,
If
yeah.
he's here to just join the party,
Well,
he cannot.
and on that, does Tom have an alternate?
Malcolm is down.
Malcolm, there's like 3
I didn't know.
I saw on your list, Malcolm and you and. No,
Okay.
it's you and Malcolm.
He has an alt.
Second little administrative point. I sent around, I think about, maybe even before Christmas, I don't remember, a list of Wednesday dates as potential meeting dates. All on Wednesdays, all at 3 o'clock. I don't think anybody got, at least of this group, got back to me. I don't think there were any
Love it.
complaints or quite, you love it. Well, there may be one curveball there. Select board always meets on Wednesdays, so this is a tough day for Tom, and meeting with Libby, as I did the other day, it's a tough day for Libby, and she would like to attend some of these meetings. So what I kind of agreed to with Libby was we would go through our calendar of, say, the next 3 to 5 weeks using Wednesdays. And I said, asked her to come back to us with, if you want us to switch so that it's an easier day for her to attend, you tell us what.
Will they give us the room? Because the problem has been the room and we're being squeezed into,
Yeah.
this Wednesday was a room availability. If they'll give us the damn room, like FinCom's meeting tomorrow, they met yesterday. So that's their problem to give us the space.
Well, my request to her was, you tell us the days that are the best for you and that there's a room available, and we'll talk about whether we can shift to those days.
Mhm.
Okay? Let's see,
So how do we leave that?
well,
Libby
we're
will get-
gonna go forward with Wednesdays for, say,
Yeah.
let's call it the next 3 to 5 weeks. Until Libby gets back to us with her suggested alternate meeting dates. Okay?
But just along those lines, is that any time when any of us can't meet, like FinCom is pretty strong right now, this time of year, you've got at least 1 or 2 a week, don't you?
2 weeks, sometimes 3.
And so you gotta be careful about that.
Right, well, we're just gonna have to work through it.
Okay,
Okay?
Mhm.
Couple of highlights of my meeting with Libby on Monday. Number one, she did ask that when we're looking for an outside speaker and we decide among ourselves, gee, Joe's gonna call this person or Jeff's gonna call this person or anybody, let that person be the point person. Don't sort of go rogue, if you will, and start calling around to various, the MMA or others. I guess, it just makes those folks confused as to which committee is doing what and who's doing what.
who's gonna be the point person? The
Well,
person
for whatever the issue is, I would say
like you would
more
be the
generally,
point?
it's gonna be me or Jeff as my backup.
Okay,
We're gonna talk a little bit about this project plan that I composed, but Libby raised some interesting issues about the complexities of the town of Nantucket, in particular, the fact that Nantucket is a town and a county at the same time. And her question to me was, well, if we have town councilors, how do we handle the county commissioners, which are currently the select board? So something, I think was just an example of.
would you like to comment on that?
No.
Later.
I would not. And then there's something like the NP and EDC, which is also a chartered organization, is not technically under the umbrella of the town. So I think as we dig into this and dig into the town's charter, there are a lot of peculiarities, just historical peculiarities that we're gonna have to learn about and figure out how to deal with. Libby is willing and interested in presenting to the group, particularly on the history and structure of our current town charter, which I think would be an interesting bit of education for us. And then some of these peculiar aspects of the town organization. I think a little further down the line, Libby and maybe John Giorgio would like to come in and talk to us about, again, things like the NP and EDC and the Parks and Recs Commission. Where does that's really not a department, it's kind of almost a brand name, in my mind. Okay, the last 2 things on this front, one of my assignments at the last meeting was to contact Michael Dutton, who is the town manager of Bridgewater. Bridgewater is a town that went through conversion from town meeting to town council 12 years ago. And I actually finally got to him yesterday and spoke to him this morning. He is very willing and interested in speaking to us at our January 24th meeting. So he'll be the A speaker. I'm sort of hoping that Libby would come in and be the B speaker, if you will, the second speaker, to talk about the charter. I don't think that needs quite as much time, but So anyway, we're go for Mike Dutton, in 2 weeks. And then, Jeff and I have both reached out to the Collins Center, and this fellow, Mike Ward, is, I guess, the primary guy.
Correct.
I don't know if we talked about this last time, but apparently, there is a big advantage to dealing with the Collins Center if we decide we want a facilitator to sort of help us through this whole process. The Collins Center has a big advantage in that as a state agency, you don't have to go through procurement to hire them. And I think there may actually be a little money in there out there in the town coffers that we could use to hire somebody like the Collins Center if we decide we want to do that. Long way of saying one of the next meetings, probably not the 24th, maybe the next one. I think I'd like to try to get Mike Ward to talk to us again, kind of a higher level, help us learn about how this process can be managed. Okay?
If I can really quickly do that.
Yeah.
I would say in general, he seemed very willing to participate and come and talk to the group about the questions that we had raised and their potential involvement. So
Right.
he seemed very positive about engaging in that process.
Great. And the only caveat, or not caveat, but aspect of it that Libby said is this would be sort of like the first meeting is free. He'd be happy to come and kind of give us the high level, how it all works and the different kinds of government forms. If we want more help from him, we'd have to decide we want to go through some sort of commercial relationship with him because
What's the name of this guy?
Michael Ward,
Michael Ward?
he's through the Collins Center at UMass Boston.
Yeah, I got it. I just didn't have his name.
All right.
Joe, did you get a sense of how long it would take for us to arrange a commercial relationship with them?
my impression from what Libby said is, fairly straightforward. I think if we decide after we meet him at a meeting that, gee, this guy seems knowledgeable, and as we're kind of figuring out our task here, it becomes apparent, gee, having someone who really kind of knows this whole field way better than we will. And I'll be quite honest, I'm sort of starting to lean back in that direction. I think we can make a decision and ask Libby to find some money for us and go from there. So,
I think, and my talk to him is depending upon the level of involvement, if we chose to engage them in, there would be different monies involved. And if you wanted it for whatever it would be, they would put that in a proposal back to the town and to the committee. We could select then, and then if there was monies available, we essentially could bypass procurement, putting out the bid and RFP process because they're a state agency, so
okay.
it should be quick.
That gets us to public comment. I'm just looking at the picture. Donna, I see you and I see, let's see, Janet Schulte and Pamela Swan who are on. I don't. No, it looks like the folks that are out there on Zoom. Do any of you have a comment or a question at this stage of the agenda, or shall we power on?
Everything is fine. I don't have a question yet. Thank you.
I don't have a question. I'm just listening in. Thank you.
Okay,
No
Great.
questions at this time, no.
thanks, Pam. All righty. So now we're down to number 6, and again, I think our intention, getting back to Jill's question, was that we would have had a speaker at this meeting, but didn't quite come together. So what I thought we might try to do this meeting are really numbers 6 and 7 on the agenda. The first one is to kind of talk about this, what I've called the project plan. Do all of you have a copy of it with you?
Yes.
Or, I've actually got new ones.
You mean updated or?
Well, slightly updated. I'm probably slightly breaking open meeting rules here, but it's really it's the same. Donna and Pam, I will send, the differences are fairly minor. I will send you new copies when I get home tonight.
Thank
But
you.
if you have copies of the old quote unquote project plan, it'll serve you just as well.
Okay.
And so my question, just to give you guys my thinking here, after we left our meeting back on the 20th, I must admit, I thought it was very good discussion. I thought people had a lot of interesting comments, but we were kind of all over the place, Jeremy was giving us, you gotta unpack it. He said unpack it about 20 times.
Identify the problem, right?
Identify the problem, and then there was talking about, I think I argued, gee, let's just find a charter and work from a template and, be more pragmatic. Anyway, I found myself sitting down on my computer and writing out this outline that, if I had to summarize it, is kind of a third education, a third kind of writing or composing a charter, however you might do that, whether you take somebody at some other towns and, change Franklin to Nantucket. And then 20 to 30%, this issue of communicating to the public, whether public relations or public education. What I'm curious from the rest of the committee is, does this make any sense? Is this, a reasonable way to start our process here? And and sort of use this to help us decide, who do we want to talk to us? What other information do we need? Because I don't know. So I'll shut up. I mean, I think I'd like to hear from you, so.
I talked to John Giorgio about this on a number of occasions, and John says that they are very comfortable and very experienced in writing charters. Someone said to me, well, you don't want to get stuck with our current town council. I don't remember who said that, but quite frankly, I think if we look at KP Law and all the experience they have around the Commonwealth, they could come up with a model of a charter that met our needs, rather than us trying to write it. I don't think we're going to write a charter, but I think with council, whether it's the UMass people or anybody else. But anyway, I did have that conversation. John smiled and said, we're really good at this and we can be very helpful. But that's right.
Any other comments or thoughts or observations?
I guess one of them is, and I have a PR background, but so forgive me for saying this, but as much as I'm concerned about, I think it's important that we get public input. I'm not so worried about marketing something that we later worried about that. I want to get the input from the public. It's a big change. And there are a lot of things that people don't know, haven't thought about. And I don't know if we're gonna do public hearings or not. You have a question for next bit, I think, but. Or, maybe you're just gonna have us go out and do our own little focus groups on our own, but to me, getting some public input, I mean, I know that one of the reasons this group exists is that we don't have, I think, enough public information. So maybe that's what we're going to do.
Well, I think we should have open public hearings, at least have one. We did that with the town council, or town government study committee. We had 2 open sessions over 2 fairgrounds and, or 4 fairgrounds and.
Yeah.
How many people showed up, Curtis?
About 6 or 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But to me, it's just the right thing to do.
You have to go through the effort.
I agree. I think we will, at some point in this, we will have to go through the effort and have some sort of a public input session. But I'm concerned that we'll get 5 people, but unless we can be a little more creative.
Do I just have to say through you?
Yeah. Actually, just on that, I know we're supposed to do through the chair and all that stuff. This is a small group. As long as we're respectful of each other, I'd rather let the discussion
Committee
go.
of the whole.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Well, I wanted to chime in and say I could not agree more. And after the last meeting, I have been actually going out, just listening to people, whether it's on the ferry and asking if I can go to their house and talk with them on another day. And I've really been, and I have a qualitative research background, as well as a quantitative research background. And I know that at this stage of something, going around and just like giving the microphone to people and hearing what their thoughts are so that we can clarify, as much as we are attempting to be representative of, the larger community in this group. I think that's an essential idea. And to some degree, we're all assuming that we are able to do that because, who we are and our interests and we get selected for this thing. And it's because people assume it's not just Caroline Balzer and what she's interested in, it's that we are all interested in the larger community of Nantucket and we're trying to share it here. But to do that in a more organized fashion, I think is absolutely essential. And even though it might be discouraging that we've only gotten 8 people in the past, I certainly think that there are ways to optimize for that without any question, and that we should be doing it so that not just we're making sure we're representing Nantucket well, but also to inspire trust. Somebody made a comment to me recently, oh, how's it going on that committee? And the comment was, we heard that there's not a lot of experience on that committee about government. And I'm thinking, well, like.
Curtis is bringing up our average, however, so.
But it's just, whether that's true or not, just if that's the chit chat that's going around, the town wants to be able to have some faith in us and some confidence in us. So if we're listening to what people say, I think that's a good way of bringing that up.
Could I comment on that also?
Sure, sorry, I was
I,
trying to get Malcolm in.
for the fun of it, I looked up, there are 35 area representative organizations like the Brant Point Association. There are 35 associations listed in Nantucket. Personally, I have always felt that part of what we needed to do was reach out to every one of them. I would, for example, volunteer with 1 or 2 of us to go to Rotary and say, hey, let's tell you what we're doing. And think of the movers and shakers that are already in Rotary. I'd go to the school committee. I go to any kind of organized group that meets regularly and offer to come now and just say, hey, let's hear what you have to say. Here's where we are. Give them an update. So I'm right on board with you on that.
Well, and I think I said this, like one for both the last 2 meetings, I actually think that part of the process could be more important than whether the charter that we create
Right.
is the Cadillac or the Mercedes or whatever metaphor you want to use of charters, because you can always, fix it if it's not quite right.
Do you want change is going to be the fundamental question.
Oh, I think as someone who gets to go through this process, one that I like to think about for planning initiatives with the town. Going to people is the easiest way. Look at what the town has just recently done with the harbor plan, where there were public information sessions that over 100 people attended in person because we scheduled it at different times and at different places. And then had an online survey that went over, I think, 560 participants at the end. I think there's a really easy avenue to collect information. This meeting is technically a public meeting. Anyone could attend this meeting and participate if they wanted to. Creating an opportunity for people to answer a couple of set questions, that's really easy, and it can be as simple as, do you feel that the current form of government is meeting your needs? Yes or no? And that creates some real interesting information. But also going to them and just saying, say your piece. We just want to hear what people have to say about their level of satisfaction. To take back and inform the conversation is pretty easy to do. Even if it's set questions that, groups that meet, just send back the answers to. Say we had our regular meeting, whether it's the Anglers Club or Interfaith Council or Civic League or any of these, it's easy to collect that information. You just got to create opportunity for that.
How did you get 550 people in a meeting?
550 people survey responses, and then individual meetings where I think our lowest attendance was 75 out of the Manicat Admiralty
Can we
Club.
make him the chairman of the outreach committee? Because I don't know how you did it, but I love it. So
Well, you just have to get
well,
the
you did
word
it.
out.
Get it out.
Yeah,
You
it's-
be in charge of that part of this commission as far as I'm concerned.
Now, so that prompts a question for either Jeff and the 2 folks who are connected to the town here. Tom, do you know whether, because we never did this on FinCom, do you know whether we could, say, write a weekly letter to the Inky or a weekly letter, or maybe bi-weekly letter, but to the Nantucket Current or some of these, every other week or once a month, or whatever week, but have a letter to the voters saying, guess what, your town council study committee has been meeting for the last 3 weeks, and we've been we've been educating ourselves about the forms of government. We've been thinking about and hearing from other towns that have converted. We're trying to gather information to help us decide, what form, is a change really necessary? What form of government? I don't know. But literally do it as doesn't have to be a lot of depth, but I think every month, every 2 weeks, a letter shows up, ahead of Chris Perry's. letter.
Hopefully,
Well, I
less
think
too
that-
much humor.
I think that's what Jeff has a good point, which is to do this online survey as well. I think we could
Yeah.
probably get some information through a survey, at some point. I don't know at what point in the process
Yeah.
we need to do
Well,
that, but that's getting good feedback and then kind of build from there, because we can say, oh, these respondents said X, Y, and Z. And,
Right.
that's what's gonna help us also, per Jeremy's request about identifying the problem.
Yeah.
And then if I could tag onto that, which is a little separate, but yeah, I wanted to see if if we could get the clerk to, show us voter registration over the last 20, 30 years, what was voter registration in our first town charter, what is it now? Because that's changed. And then the number of voters and the percentage who turns out. But I think town meetings kind of always been like about a max of 700. It has been for as long as I've been here. And so it'd be interesting to see that number seems to hold, even though our registration has gotten bigger. So that kind of information is something that was hoping we could ask her for.
Yeah. And that's all easily obtainable information, so.
Okay. Could I then ask, I'm sorry, but any other? Oh,
Yes,
sorry, Donna.
Donna.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see you until.
I know. I think all this can be done concurrently. Informing, ourselves, reaching out to the Inky, doing the wire services and the surveys. And that really would satisfy our need to reach out to Nantucketers and keep them informed, because the trust that you're all talking about, it's very important, and we build that now. And even the people who are on now, I just see Malcolm just came on. I think it's very important that we're out there once or twice a month somehow and invite the public.
Well, it just strikes me, and many of you may know John Brescher, and there was, this government study committee that submitted a report, I think, 2 years ago.
I was on it.
You were on it, okay. And, no, all due respect, Curtis, nobody knew you were out there doing that. I mean, maybe some people close to the process did, but the average voter, it was like over their head. And it just strikes me that there's an opportunity for us to, not that it's that super newsworthy, but if we can sort of drip information out there to the voters in Nantucket that this is going on, maybe we'd have a better chance to, and I'm right with you, Curtis, go out and talk to all these groups, we get to May and June, and we go out and talk to the Rotary, we talk to the homeowners associations, and
Wisconsin Civic.
it's a 15-minute part of their agenda where we tell the story and why we think it's a good idea, and hopefully.
I think his idea of the survey will trigger a lot of this. This will
I
bring
think
us.
that's the best first step.
Yeah, if I had to leave today's meeting with one thought on what you said about me,
Well,
it would be.
Although surveys, there are different types of surveys, and at this stage, an open-ended survey versus a closed-ended, like these are the specific questions, or it's produces radically different information, so.
Whatever you did to get 500 people on the last one.
I think the point though is, one of the reasons we're here is we're trying to change town meeting, because there's only a limited number of people there. The survey can go out to the broader public. There's often a difference at the ballot from the votes at town meeting. So there is a gap there, and I think the survey is good because we're gonna capture more people at
But-
town meeting.
I think what we have found over time is there's a lot of folks that are intimidated by participation for a lot of different reasons. And participation can be difficult for a lot of different reasons. If you simply want some information and it can get pushed to my phone and I can answer 3 questions in 5 minutes on my phone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna participate because it's really easy to do and I'm gonna do it anyways. That's where we've great success with using online platforms to get information from people and get participation, because they're not gonna come to. No one's coming to Fort Fairgrounds Road for a presentation on this outside of like 3 or 4 people, but you can get meaningful responses from people in the places they wanna go. Or if you say it's gonna take 2 minutes of your time, and not to be crude, you can do it while you're going to the bathroom, because we know you're using your phone anyways. Spend the 3 minutes while you're in there, answer the questions, and you get a response.
This is, we're an open Zoom here.
But you know,
That's
he's
all right.
just hit the difference between the town government where we posted meetings and no one came. But where you can go on your phone and do a survey, that I think is a significant difference.
Well, you
Yeah,
would raise your hand.
Sorry.
Cycles you.
The INM would be happy to have content. I've written under contributing writer to them. They would be more than happy to publish whatever we send on.
I don't know what we'd be writing to the INM, so I'm a little confused about that. I can understand communicating when we have something to communicate, I just don't know.
Well,
what
I
it is.
guess I was thinking that the Current and Daybreak, if once, whatever,
Well,
let's
they're
call
what
it once a
Jeff's
month, we write a 3-paragraph, we had 2 meetings this month, we talked about A, B, C, and D, we're making progress. Signed, Joe Grouse, chair of the committee, and then, I think those email news streams would like content, and maybe the INM would too, I don't know, but I don't want to pay to advertise. I would rather find one of these avenues who will just say, oh, great, newsletter. But I also don't know whether we're technically allowed, given that there are, meeting minutes, and can we do our own sort of drip PR?
That was a question for Erica, I think.
Yeah.
She'll know the answer to that. I have two things. Speaking of the Town Government Study Committee, on the warrant, which the select board will approve next week, I think, is Article 85, and that is a home rule petition to change the charter from a bunch of recommendations. There are 14 sections of it, including like changing the town moderator's term from 1 year to 3 years, bunch of other recommendations. So there has been some, I was just kind of pointed out just in general for all of us to take a look at that and kind of put that in our thinking of that there have been some changes to the charter, and this will go out. That may take a year or 2 or 4.
Yeah, but this is the 3rd time around, isn't it? Because it went up to the legislature and they never acted on it, so it had to be done again.
Well, that's the legislature. That's how
Okay,
it works.
but let's not say that we didn't try to get it out, because this will be the 3rd time around.
Oh, I certainly was not saying that. I'm just saying
No.
we should think about that when we're talking about the charter, is that there have been some changes to try and, in the most general sense, make town government more efficient, or whatever the term you want to put on. And the other thing I would say is on survey research. So we went through this with the short-term rental work group, and also recently with the focus groups for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund on the year-round deed restriction. And Carolyn, you probably know this after in the work you've done, is that I think we need to separate, like, there's all of us going out and talking to people and then coming back and talking about it anecdotally. There's receiving emails to like a central email, like everyone emails Joe, and she gets 100 people, and we take that sort of sample, and depending on what everybody thinks about that, but that's one thing. But actually doing a survey needs somebody who's a professional who can account for bias and make sure it's carefully worded, because this will be a municipal process, even though we're kind of a separate committee of citizens, but we're under the auspices of the town. And anything that we do should absolutely go through that process, and not just be all of us trying to come up with the best questions. And as much as our intentions may be well done and well intended, I don't think that's the right thing to do. So that unfortunately may incur an additional cost, and that's something we'd have to think about and ask for.
Oh,
But
I
I-
never thought we would write those questions ourselves.
Okay,
Yeah, totally.
But yes, there's a step before that. We've got to ask for a little money, but do you know how much your survey costs on the harbor plan?
I mean, it was included in our consultant's cost as something that they were contracted to do. And I'm surely I could separate that out at some point, but I think that's one of the benefits of using, not to jump ahead to number 8 here, but I think that's part of the benefit of using someone who's gone through the process before. I'm sure they've developed those for other communities to answer those same questions.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier to cut and paste than to write from scratch, so.
Oh, yeah, it's gotta be an impartial. I mean, Tom's totally
Yeah.
right.
Well, okay, any other comments or questions about this sort of the the project outline? If not, what I would ask all of you to do, your homework assignment, is to take the new version home. Think about it, and if there are anything missing, sections missing, issues missing, stuff that you think should be deleted because it's extraneous, would you please, that's what I put that little box to the right, so you can make little notes in it. And then email them back to me, and then we can, I guess I would like to end up with something that is, at least for this group, we think a reasonable roadmap, because if we do hire Mike Ward, say, we can take this, show that to him, and I think that would, he probably has his own plans, but it might be a good starting point for that. So I'd appreciate it, and that way we can have something that, at least as far as we've gotten so far, it's a step in the right direction. Okay,
I agree with that.
all right.
So can you take any public comment on what you guys all
Yeah,
just
I'm
discussed?
sorry, Pam, sure.
I just
I
want to
didn't
say
look
that,
up
like,
anyway.
watching the conversation evolve, I think you guys have just gone in such a good direction. And I think the question of marketing came up, but it really is a question of education. And it's really making the community understand why you're going through this and, what the benefits may be, et cetera. I don't think you're really marketing it, but the more you educate before you survey or before you bring groups together with questions, because I'm sure there will be a whole bunch of spin that isn't why you're doing this. And I think the big, really important thing to most people out there is not everyone can go to town meeting. And the fact that there might be another way for people to be represented is really important, as well as there might be a way for the town to be able to move quicker on a lot of things and not have everything wait for a year, especially if there's funding or grants or things that could benefit the town.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else? Malcolm, you have any? No?
Yes,
I
I
agree.
think we're headed in the right direction.
I'm sorry, Doug. Malcolm, I don't know, were you trying to make a?
I was just unmuting my, no, I think you're doing great. You're in the right direction.
Okay,
It's all been said.
all right, so let's move on to number 7, which is, this gets back to Jeremy Bloomer's, what problem are we trying to solve? What, if we were gonna talk to a citizen, a voter on the street, what's wrong with town meeting? What are we trying to fix? And I mean, I'll start off. I think in my view, one of the biggest issues on town meeting is that just not getting great representation. We're getting 700 or 800 people out of 8,000 or 9,000 voters, and it's really not, it's really not an appropriate representation. It's the people who want to be there, not the people who, well, I was going to say should be there, but you certainly would think more people would want to come and vote, for the various things that govern their town. So
Following on that, for me, it's
I'll be the scribe on this one, because it's just,
You are?
I'll help you. I'm gonna write down what's wrong with town meeting, because I think it's important, so.
well, for me, it's that gap, like I mentioned before, between town meeting and the vote at the ballot. We can get 2, 3 in a federal year, we can get 4,000 people to turn out at the ballot. But we can't get that at town meeting. We're still kind of maxing out at 750. So we know that the public wants to participate, right? We know that they are participating on one day a year for one day every 2 years, but they're not participating on that day. So that's what I don't like. And that just follows along to what you said, that we're getting greater participation, at the polls, but not participating.
My
Can I,
answer is that it's-
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna let Donna go first, sorry. Douglas.
there are so many, we've talked about
Look
that.
up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. We've talked about this in our previous meetings. Yes, it's very important because it's so timely. We can address issues so we don't lose out on, for example, grants and so forth. And it does provide an opportunity for Nantucketers to be involved more often. And to definitely have more of a say in what's going on, and more often it's timely. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Travis.
My observation is that the current town meeting is cumbersome and not in a position to be as responsive as we need to be. And I go back to the grants and things like that. So cumbersome and not as quickly responsive. Whereas the town council needs more.
So I watched Barnstable pretty extensively, and that was impressive.
Well,
It is. They have a provision for town meeting. You can petition 300 signatures and then you've got a town meeting. But the other thing that struck me was just the barrage of public comment at all the meetings.
Yep.
It's like 3 hours of public comment at each meeting. And it's really a participatory system. And that each person gets 4 minutes and they efficiently deliver their comment at the meeting. And they go through one after another person.
are they sort of segregated by whatever subject is, so we're buying a new dump truck and then people line up and have comments.
It starts out with public comment just on broad issues and whatever somebody wants to bring to the issue or to the board. But it is impressive and looking at it, you're like, well, this is a pretty efficient system.
I would encourage everyone to go online and watch them. They're on Thursday nights. I've been to 2 of them. I have been allowed to testify. Look at let's say the unregistered, non-voting year-round resident who can't go to town meeting. They can walk into a town council meeting and say what they need to say, and they don't have to hire a babysitter and spend $300 and waste a day of work. I went into the town meeting, introduced myself. They had a little sign-up sheet. There were 18 speakers the night I was there. I just said, I'm here. I've been on the town government study committee. We looked at this. This is a model that I think is excellent. And I wanted to feel it myself, and I want to congratulate you on running a great system, and they applauded me. So I can say, any one of you, go on Thursday night, watch them, and you're right on. It's amazing, the efficiency.
Curtis, what could you tell us how to get on?
It's on
Well,
YouTube. You can
Yeah, you just go on to
just-
Town of Barnstable,
Town council.
Town Council, and they have a YouTube clip
Okay, thank you.
at Thursday nights, usually
Okay.
every other Thursday.
Their town meetings are available too, like the
They
broad
did,
ones.
they just
Yeah.
had a town meeting, because they had a contentious issue around the Cape Wind power that came in through a certain area, the wetlands. And they lined up 2 rows and everybody stood in line and delivered 4 minutes. And everybody had a piece of paper that they were reading off, and it's just a very efficient, let's go through this system. And that was their town meeting.
We do that too. I mean, you can give every commenter in public comment 2 hours if you wanted. We do at the select board, I'm the timekeeper for Dawn, 3 minutes. And as long as it's the new law based on a SJC case is that as long as it's equal access for individuals, the time is the same for everybody. So, and the moderator does that at town meeting. So to me, that doesn't, they may be very good and efficient because they have so many people there and the participation isn't worth nothing, of course. That's the whole point. To me, on town meeting, it's what Jill said before about the numbers of people who can show up and whether that's actually representative of the Nantucket community as a whole. And also, but if that is the case, then I would put in plug's not the right word, because I'm not advocating for it, but something I said at the first meeting is I think we should consider representative town meeting in our deliberations. Because if that's the consensus, that would allow participation for more folks to be elected on the ballot. It would allow, it might be an easier way to get a quorum. Well, I mean, we have to pay attention to a quorum to make sure there's enough other representative members there. But that would be a balance between town meeting, between the legislative and the executive. Also my thinking has changed on this a little bit since I've been on the select board, which I can talk more about as we go on the meetings. But yeah, so I'll stop there for now.
Okay, one of the things that I'm concerned about, particularly with the structure of government, and I made this point last meeting, but the legislative branch has more power than it currently uses. So Congress, which is the model for town meeting, has the ability to form oversight committees and then check the executive if it needs to. And if in municipalities, it's really about carrying out bylaws. Is the executive carrying out various bylaws or legislation that the legislative branch is putting forward? So it's not enough to just make a law. You actually have to negotiate with the executive branch to see that law is either put through the way it was intended or not. So that's one of the roles of the legislative branch. And that's not a role that town meeting is really capable of doing or carrying through on. If it's once a year, they get bombarded with legislation. And you're really not sort of following through with the things you need to be doing in that capacity. So that has to be, the legislative branch has to be a more sort of dedicated role. It has to have a more dedicated role. So that's my opinion.
So you're arguing that the town meeting is too infrequent and too, I mean, it's a crowd trying to make complicated decisions as opposed to
Yes.
9 or 10 or 11 people on a town council.
Yes, and that's a reason for a representative style. That's more of a reason for representative style. So you get more dedicated people who have more time, they have more ability, they're dedicated to this position. I think town council is more of a sort of a distillation of representative form because you get more, you get more sort of time into that individual or into that role. So I think it's, I mean, not to go into that subject because we're definitely, we should touch that on that issue. Whether we should do representative. I mean, people stopped me in the grocery store and said, what about representative? And we have to address that issue. So, I mean.
Well, I agree, and I think part of what having people like Michael Button and, some of these other folks come talk to us about the differences, the benefits and the shortcomings of town meeting, representative town meeting and town council. I think we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't at least make sure we understood the pluses and minuses of those forms, even though some of us
I have
We
a
know the
question
answer.
about, representative town meeting. Does it meet once a year or does it meet, every 2 months? I mean, that to me, the frequency is a question that's implied in the whole question of town council.
Well, in Massachusetts, 200 voters can call a special town meeting anytime they want. And also you only need 10 signatures for a citizen's warrant article. So it's like on that part, on the access side, it's still there. I would also, not to disagree with my colleague here, but Congress and town meeting are not an analog for each other. Congress is a representative body of the representatives that are elected. Town meeting is citizens going to vote as the legislative branch. So it's,
True, however, we hold the purse strings in town meeting, Congress holds the purse strings. I mean, I'm not saying that there, you know, there are different roles, each one. But what I'm saying is that the legislative branch has this role, and the legislative branch in town, or in town meeting has this role as well. So they're similar, they're modeled, of course, Congress is a representative.
I was just gonna throw in another, I think, shortcoming of town meeting is sort of the combined issues of preparation and expertise. You know, one of the things that has driven me crazy going to 9 or 10 or 11 town meetings, special town meetings, is voters show up. Large percentages of them show up completely unprepared. You know, they've barely read the warrant. They don't know what the issues are. And, you know, and then you end up in these town meetings where people try to educate themselves on town meeting floor, or have, you know, superficially decided they don't like some article, you know, for any reason, whether it's a solid reason or just a crazy one. But it's a very inefficient process when you have 900 people show up who don't really know what's going on. The other side is complexity, in that, you know, the town departments, the executive branch, whatever it is, the select board, people have done a ton of work to prepare certain articles for the public. There have been, you know, and again, how many FinCom meetings have we sat through where, you know, we're dealing with millions of dollars of decisions, and there isn't a single person in the room other than the committee. I mean, people don't, but then they show up at town meeting, and I don't want, actually, I have a question about this, you know, $3,000 television you're buying for the conference room. You want to go like, are you kidding me? You know, I shouldn't be so, I'm being a little caustic, but I do think there's an issue of preparation, you know, and then life is becoming very complicated, and some of these things require a lot of work that you have an unprepared, you know, legislative branch crossing with, you know, the executive and administrative who have done all the prep work, but then they get ignored or overrun.
Well, and following that, again, I like to go back to some facts and some math, if we can, that, you know, what is our budget now versus what was it 10 years ago? What was it 20 years ago? And what was our borrowing power too? Because that's what's really changed, the complexity of that. Our government has grown. We've gotten a lot bigger. It's gotten more complicated. Jeff, I'm sure your office has gotten bigger to the extent you're able to hire
Well, I mean,
people.
I'll just say, just perfect example, right? Our department in 2011, when it formed, was 2, and now we have 10 full-time employees.
Yeah.
Unless,
And that's all in the last 10
And do
years.
we need
unless
them all?
absolutely, Curtis.
Well, that's a good point too.
We could use more,
Well,
but,
but I'm just saying government's grown. It has gotten more complicated. It's more layered than it was. And so I think, I mean, we know that more people in town water now and town sewer now than they were. So I mean, you're just, so the interface between the public and the town.
I think to Joe's point a minute ago, our town meetings are educationally overwhelming. I mean, we average over 100 articles a town meeting.
Well, that's right. And
Most
they're
towns,
closing next week
Yeah.
for a meeting that's gonna be held 6 months from now, and you're closing the warrant next week.
that's statutory by state law.
so
Well, that's a lousy way to do business.
Well, but it's either way, it's closing for the select board. Citizens articles closed back in October. didn't it?
Right.
but I think it doesn't alleviate the point. I mean, the inefficiency and the slowness of how those warrants put together and publication deadlines and the public notice requirements that are set up are out of our hands, but it's not out of our hands to say, we have 120 articles that we're gonna ask essentially every registered voter in Nantucket, in theory, who could attend town meeting to understand and go vote on. And you set up a system where, and I know firsthand that I'm in a little deeper in the system than most. My friends call me and they say, just tell me how to vote,
Yeah.
because it's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I could be like, hey, on the general fund article, everyone should vote no. And just like, and people would do it because they don't know. They don't even know what it is. And it's too much. And you look at towns on the Cape of similar size, or even towns off Cape of similar size. And you see those town meetings and they're like 30. And you can go, it's just impossible to go and have informed discussion with that many articles with those people and expect them to go in prepared. And it's super frustrating to be on the preparation side and then go and be like, I can't believe this is what we're talking about. We've had 8 months of public meetings that we've talked about this. Why are we arguing about this now and here when we could have done it? But people don't know the process either, right? We see it all the time. And it's an educational issue, but it's also, there's highly technical issues now where, I'll use one that I'm more involved in with fertilizers. You're asking the general public to become experts in fertilizer management to make the best decision for Nantucket, but that's not what happens, people vote with whichever sensational side they decide they want to be a part of and how it's marketed to them. Because no one wants to take the time to do it, and nor should they. I mean, it's a lot to take into, because 2 weeks from now, you're gonna say, hey, you need to forget everything you know about fertilizer because you're gonna have to replace all that space with short-term rentals. And it's a high demand for everybody to do. It's difficult. And I think that's, for me, part of what's difficult with town meeting is you're trying to inform and have an informed citizenry. But what's that breaking point where it's too much to where people disengage?
Well, and on that, I think that creates some bad faith between people with what you're saying, Jeff, because, for example, we'll pass articles for, financial purposes, but then people will say, well, that didn't get built or that didn't get done, and they can ask the town and they can find out the information. But they're like, I thought we approved money to do that, or, and it didn't happen because maybe the town went and got a grant, and then they didn't use the money, but there's never any of that follow-up. So I think people always, there's some suspicion out there that people think that they don't really know what the government's doing, and yet they go to town meeting, vote on it, and that's a frustrating little gap that we have, that you would think town meeting would mean you had more faith, but I think to some extent, people have less.
Joe?
Yeah, Donna, was that you? I thought I heard.
Yeah, I want to suggest, you had said when you started our meeting today that the first third is education and the discussion about what's going on with Barnstable. I wonder, I'll just pose this, an assignment that we watch the Barnstable meeting to educate ourselves even more.
I think that's an excellent idea. I mean, obviously Bo took it on himself and Curtis has.
And Curtis, yeah.
I think we all ought to in the next 2 weeks. As much as you can stand. I mean.
I will.
Okay,
I know a Barnstable town councilor a little bit. I might be able to ask him to come to a meeting. And I would just add on a kind of philosophical point, Barnstable town councilors are paid $10,200 a year. And that's part-time, like select board is. And I can tell you, after being a select board member for 7+ months now, how much work it is. So we'd be asking, if this did happen and we went to 7 or 9 members, for them to dedicate an awful amount of time. And it's public service, it's worth it, it's good work and all that stuff. But that should be in our thinking as well on the practicality of being a town councilor.
Yes.
yes,
You're ultimately asking for people's time. So you have to make a market. And if you want good results, you gotta make the market to compensate people. And that's just the way it is. I mean, right now you're telling you to take all your time And then dump it into something that's not gonna compensate. So,
Well, I love it. That's,
I mean,
that's my thing,
I-
but that's
get it, I
not,
get it, no.
not for everybody, that's for sure.
well, it's entertaining, I'm sure, there's a value to that. Right? And you get some education, you get to know the system, right? But ultimately, you have to compensate people, or you're just not gonna get them.
Curtis, you had a comment?
Just for the fun of it, I looked up, Northampton, which has a mayor council system. Because our new chief came from Northampton. And they pay, I believe, something like 16,000 a year to their counselors. Their mayor was making 93,000. She was 45th on the pay scale of the town of Northampton. In
There
the
were 44
range.
people who
And
made
they-
more money than she did?
Yes, and they just raised her to 138,000 as mayor of the town, and there's still 20 people who make more money than, like, people who get overtime.
Well, I think on the comp thing, I think is a subject that probably a little further down the road when we get into maybe more of the nitty and grits of this, but I'm with Tom. I mean, well, I don't know. You weren't exactly pitching for a salary increase, maybe you were. But no, I think if we want competent people, you have to compensate them. So,
Mhm.
sorry, yes, go
Well,
on.
I'd like to make a process comment about all this. I think what's being said is that
Well, son, yes.
we all understand that we've tipped over into a situation where it's unwieldy. And that is being defined as this one problem of, well, people can't keep up and they can't be informed, and people are asking, how should we vote? And it's not therefore representative. And we've got the gap, 707,000. And we're thinking about who's gonna do these roles and how much are they going to be paid? Why are they gonna do the roles? They're either doing the roles because they're very civic minded and they want to contribute and they can afford to contribute. Or they're doing it because they're gonna get paid something to do it. Or they might be doing it because they get some sort of power for doing it. And this is something I want to put on the table as we're talking about all of this, because there are a lot of different people and groups are interested in changing the form of government that we have here. And there are different agendas behind that. And that will, and some of those things converge and there's overlaps. But I think as we're discussing all of this, we need to be aware that no one's ever going to get compensated a ton of money to do this. They're doing it because they're civic minded, or they're doing it because they get some kind of influence for doing it. I mean, whether they say they're happy for that or not, that's part of it. And I'd like to just make sure that we're aware of what groups gain more or less influence as we think about making the change.
Why?
Well, because for example, I think in the first meeting, somebody mentioned Act Now, and Act Now having a specific interest in some timeline, and I didn't quite catch what that was about, but it made me interested in, what Act Now was all about. So I looked up their mission statement, and they're full of that, just one group. I mean, this is just an example of one group, but they're full of an interest in changing the town form of government for reasons having to do with their agenda. And I'm sure their agenda overlaps with other people's agenda, perfectly fine. But I just think that since, for example, that one group is so into changing the form of government, we should be mindful of what's behind that. And there are probably other groups too. And we should probably be talking to all those people to make sure that we understand what their influence currently is in the matter.
Well, government is special interests.
Yeah,
It's interest from everywhere, and all the time you're getting bombarded with interest. The way you check that typically is you have different. So you have the executive, you have the legislative, you have the, it's a separation of powers, and then these two, entities or bodies play against each other. And that's my one problem with the legislative. It doesn't check those problems, those special interests. But that's why you build these things and you structure them so that they have natural checks and balances.
So Bo, what
I
would you
think
say
we're jumping
is the way
ahead.
of increasing the check?
May I
The way
say something?
to the check.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, going back to Barnstable.
Mhm.
What you see is actually kind of contentious.
Mhm.
It's not pretty.
Hmm.
You don't get, like, people are arguing, there's actually contentious stuff going on, people checking the board. And, I think when you kind of take away the ability to go to a town meeting style, okay, which is what Barnstable did, then what happened is the citizenry saw it as an opportunity to go one by one to address each issue,
Mhm.
and they are checking. So the broad citizenry are checking with town council.
Mhm.
And obviously, one way to do is to vote them out, right?
Right.
But the other way is to actually just go and speak your mind and participate.
In a more weekly, regular way, as
Yes,
weak as compared to
absolutely.
us. Mhm.
But how is that different than what the select board does now? People can come to public comment.
Because you're blending the executive and legislative at that point. So actually, skip that. You're taking the legislative and making it a super body with town council. And you're saying, in some ways, we're gonna give you executive powers, but for the most part, you're gonna be the legislative.
But it just depends on the people who are elected and how they use their power, though. We can't control that.
No, you can't.
Well, it does depend on how you set up the charter and which powers you give to the, the town manager,
Yep.
administrator, and which ones are kept by the town council, but,
It still depends who gets elected. It does.
Yes, and we don't
It
have
does.
control over that.
They can be strong leadership. That's how it works in Congress. I mean, that part is true.
um,
I was just wondering from him because I hear what you're saying and you're making good points, but I just wanted to understand like how, to me, the weekly select board meeting does have public comment. It does have some public participation. I
True.
don't think it has enough personal.
True, but
So what are you,
for
you
one,
sound like you like the public participation aspect of what's happening
in Barnstable,
Barnstable.
and the reason is because you're challenging the legislative. Okay, and that legislative is providing the pressure on the executive.
How, there are some people that put pressure on the select board now for things.
No, that's true, and actually, some ways, like, that's representative government,
Mhm.
because you're delegating someone like Megan Perry, who's got very much like an interest in going to the board and haranguing them, but what I'm saying is that you have these natural checks and balances built in, and that's what we have to kind of look at.
can I think we have sort of drifted off the whole idea of what are the issues, negative issues of, town meeting. I've got 8 or 9 of them written down. It strikes me, what are the benefits, or there are gonna be people here who are proponents of town meeting. What's so good about town meeting? What are we gonna have to, react to?
Joe, what do you have written down for the, I only have, I don't know.
Well, okay, so I've got not enough and some of this is cryptic, I may not even be able to read my own handwriting, but, not enough representation. The numbers issue, the gap between the number of people who actually vote on the ballot and the people who attend town meeting. A town council, it's a very slow process. Town council operates in a more timely, more rapid fashion. Town meeting is cumbersome, slow, and has sort of slow response. Number of town meeting attendees, is that really representative of the town? It's a skewed subset. Preparation of the voters at town meeting is poor. They're generally underinformed. Town meting is becoming at least this is a little editorial on my part, increasingly difficult to deal with complex and sophisticated issues. And then the meetings too infrequent, once or twice a year. Anything else? pop up?
Those are good.
Okay.
I think we were generally thinking that we were wondering if there was somehow more checks and balances in one versus the other. So I think that was the last thing that was being debated. I don't think we arrived at any opinion yet.
I would say no, there aren't.
No.
So what's so good about town meeting?
What's so good about town meetings, obviously, you get the just sort of Madisonian, you get the Madisonian separation of powers within three bodies. And that third body, the legislative branch, people feel like they get their fix. They get their like participation of within government. And that's gonna be hard to take away.
I mean, I would catch it as I think there is a significant chunk of the electorate on this island who is emotionally attached to town meeting, and they believe that it is true democracy because they get a chance to, you know, say whatever they want, argue whatever point they want on town meeting floor, and it's the people voting for whatever, even though it's slow and cumbersome and difficult.
It's a perceived direct democracy where I can go and say my piece and sway the voters to my opinion from the information I'm presenting.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
The
Sorry.
only two that I agree on that list I mean, in shades of it, right? But are really the participation and that folks can't be, as Jeff said before, expected to digest 120 articles and know exactly what is exactly going on in all of them. However, I disagree very much so with the ability that there aren't checks and balances built into it. The select board, one of the main duties is to prepare the warrant. That is worked on with town administration and is vetted by town council to make sure it's in legal form, et cetera. Citizens have an opportunity to get on the warrant with a citizen's warrant. That is a very low bar with 10 signatures, as it should be. And
I would take exception to that.
I know he would like more.
you want the opposite side of it.
Yeah, we tried that, it didn't go through.
I know. And that those who are able and have the ability to, I don't know, those who have the ability to get to town meeting, and that's one of the main issues. I fully stipulate that, but can reach out to us as their elected representatives for the executive body, and ask questions. They can come to select board meetings, they can come to public comment, they can talk to town council at the scheduled time to do a citizen's warrant article. I met with one of the citizen warrant article petitioners yesterday and they prepared a whole brief on it. It was impressive, and it really, kind of made me proud. Actually did make me proud of it.
What did you like about town meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the other kind of, I'm not trying to take a side, be a little careful on taking a side here, but,
That's fine.
Why not? You can take a side.
but I think those are the two, I would say, from my perspective, those are the two main issues, participation and the kind of complexity conundrum, as Libby put it in our strategic governance retreat. Everything is much more complicated now.
Okay.
Well said.
Sort of getting close to quitting time here.
Nobody else had anything positive to
Anything-
say about town meeting? I guess that was your question, so.
We only got 1 to 8. Any other comments on town meeting, either positive or negative? And obviously, we can pick this up again at another meeting. So.
Well, somebody's talked about what I would say is transference, the feeling that we have about it. And some people call it an ancient form of town government, and it connects us back to, Nantucket's a historic place, and that's one of the things everyone loves about Nantucket. And people can imagine, whether it's true or not, that our government, it's like the people are closer to, like what Tom was saying, they're closer to the legislative act because they can put forth a citizens warrant. And having just gone through that process myself, boy, I'm really glad I did that, because it gives me the feeling of what that mechanism is, and it's pretty darn cool. That doesn't mean that it is the most efficient thing that we should be doing right now, but people, Nantucketers, even if they're not showing up, they've they are no longer utilizing this cool thing that they have, maybe, and that's both reflective of the problem and also maybe causing the problem. But for people to recognize what they're giving up, there's gonna be a flurry of interest in the thing itself, like, oh, here's this wonderful romantic thing that's also a real thing that is power in each person, not power of the people, but each person has a power that is different than most other places. So I think we have to do something to honor that and to acknowledge why in Nantucket, why we have come away from that, why we have lost the flavor and taste of it, and we don't exercise it as much for whatever sociological reason that is.
Can I just add to that or say something
yeah,
about that? I'm sorry.
No, so I'm sorry, go ahead, Donna, and then
Oh,
Hillary, I've been waiting.
I think we have to,
what do you think?
okay, real quick. I think we have to remember that this is an archaic form of government that we're in. Years ago, in the mid 1600s, people just stayed on island. They had one or two issues. What we're trying to do in this committee is bring us up to date. We're not trying to challenge or negate our tradition. We're just trying to run our island in a much more efficient way. We're not trying to get rid of tradition.
Fair enough. Thank you, Donna. If there are no other comments from the committee, we have at least one member of the public out there. Hillary, Jeff, you can let her in or whatever. And you had a question or a comment, Hillary?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for letting me in. I'm sorry I was late to the meeting because of some things that happened in my life that prevented me from being there earlier. So I missed the beginning of the conversation, but I just wanted to contribute based on a bunch of the reading that I did since the last meeting about, what are the arguments for town meeting? And I think I did see some discussion in, one group, Amherst, that had converted from a representative town meeting to a town council form of government in 2017. That, when you have 9 or 13 people who are the town council, these people are under a tremendous amount of pressure, especially when you have vested interests that are highly motivated, and we definitely have that on Nantucket. Things can get extremely political, and you don't have the distance that comes from the protection of a very large body. And I think we could see folks getting burned out, giving up. I think we could have a problem recruiting civic-minded people who don't necessarily have a personal interest, but they're volunteering for the right reasons. And I think that's the biggest peril of a town council form of government. And I think that has to be weighed against the messiness or lack of achievement of a town meeting. And I just wanted to encourage the committee to keep in mind that we're not just talking, we can talk about inputs or we can talk about outputs. And an example of an input would be, well, people get up and they talk about the $3,000 printer or whatever, and it wastes a lot of time. And that's something nobody likes about town meeting. And wouldn't it be great if we could get rid of it? And an output would be town meeting ultimately passes a budget that has been agreed upon and recommended by the really well-informed people. And I actually think if you look at town meeting, even though it's messy and annoying and fatiguing, it actually usually does pass a budget that is recommended by the really well-informed people. So, when we talk about town meeting, it's different from Congress. It's supported by a lot of really well-informed commissions, committees, and staff. And that's why it works. So I guess I'd like to hear, considering some of the problems of the council that I mentioned, and also a focus on the outputs and getting analytical, not just about like what we find annoying, but what actually are we really failing to accomplish with our town meeting, and could it be fixed, or do we have to change the form of government? And I'm happy to answer any questions about the research that I forwarded if that was of interest and if I missed that earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. That's actually a great segue, I think, into kind of our last, I'm gonna skip over the facilitator issue because, I'm sorry. Oh,
Pamela had her hand up.
oh, I'm sorry, Pam.
Okay, I just had one comment. I think in a way we are kind of getting ahead of ourselves. If you look at what's happened in Massachusetts, and I'm much more familiar with Connecticut, but town council governments traditionally aren't that, in some ways, very similar to Board of Selectmen. You're gonna have elected officials. The size of the council may be bigger than our current Board of Selectmen. There's decisions to be made on whether those council seats represent areas of the island or if they're at large. There's decisions to be made on whether or not those people will be paid. I think to assume that a type of government is going to bring in all these other private interests is a little premature. I actually envision this as something as if it happened, that the current select board would almost like stay in place and be enhanced, and there'd be terms, you know, of people coming in and out. But I don't think we should go into this thinking that the individuals that serve the town are going to be pressured or politicized any differently than what can go on at town meeting. And I think we all know that, like, for example, when the short-term rental thing was on the town, you know, meeting for the first time, that hundreds of more people showed up just to vote on that. And that had to do with a lot of the behind the scenes work of groups like Act Now or whatever. So you're always going to have that no matter what form of government you have. I think there are ways to skin the cat that can make this more representative on a monthly or weekly basis, but still give the population the ability to come and contribute. And I'm going to say one other thing about town meeting, and no one ever brings this up in Nantucket, but there are a lot of voting people, at least my impression would be that there are a lot of people that live and work year round on Nantucket and should be considered as voters because they live and work there year round, who maybe don't speak English or maybe are in professions where they cannot take a day off to go to town meetings. So I think we're almost a little discriminatory in a way that we don't make it make it easier for more of the people to come out and know what's going on. So I'm just throwing that out there, that we need to educate in different ways and definitely hit the population in a bigger way.
Thank you, Pamela. Anyone else out there in the on the Zoom call?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I do encourage everybody, and I'm going to do it, is to watch the Barnstable. So we're on our education situation here. So I hope everybody will take a look at that. And it's after 4:30.
Yeah, after 4:30. I'm gonna skip the facilitator issue. We can talk about that at a future meeting. The next meeting, as I think we said early at the beginning of this one, we've got Michael Dutton from Bridgewater, the town manager of Bridgewater, going to talk to us. I'm going to try to see if I can get Libby to talk to us about the Nantucket Charter and its evolution. And we'll probably leave some time for general discussion on some of these other things we've talked about. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second. Caroline?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Bo?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. Everybody out there in the ether, thank you for participating, Donna and Pamela and Hillary and Malcolm, and Rachel. I'm sorry, I should have asked you for a vote too. Rachel.
It's all right.
Sorry about that. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Again, anybody have any other thoughts on the pluses or minuses of town meeting? Please send them along. We can add them to the minutes. And any comments on the project plan, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for our treats.